Okay, so while Ali joins us later, I hope, we'll start. I'll just give you a quick roundup what we're going to do. As you see, we have people from different sides of the industry. We've listened to some of them today. We've listened to Ali also yesterday talk about what is coming into the industry. What we will talk about now would be some tips on strategy, tips on technology, how to provide accessibility, how to protect data, maintain security, what are the value-added services, and competition, also, of course, customer expectations. So these are some of the main issues that we will discuss. And we will start with, shall we start with tips on strategy? And we can bring it to the region this time.
So I talked earlier in my interview with Maya in terms of strategy. I think strategy is key in terms of defining how, what technologies you're going to use, how you're going to collaborate, what business problems are you going to solve. So I think strategy is key in terms of internal, external, and how you're going to deliver for your client, right? You need to have an end goal. And again, in terms of the mobile banking side of things, how you're going to use the different channels as well.
Ahmed, before I go back to Ahmed, I want to ask you about the wallet, the idea of the wallet. Has it really worked for banks? And then maybe we'll talk about the telecom.
I think, from a bank's perspective, we've seen a lot of different structures that have sort of...
He has joined us.
Morning. As I was mentioning, there were a couple of distinct structures that we've seen over the last couple of years. One of them has been more of a complementary structure, and the other one was, most of it was, looked at as a way to get money out of the banking industry. And while it might appear as a competition, it's not as real of a competition or a threat just because of the structure involved. So if we've looked at the different structures, I think someone was yesterday asking about some numbers in terms of adoption. I think Bahrain has, specifically, Bahrain has announced triple-digit growth in Fawri Plus payments, and a double-digit growth in Fawri payments over the last year between 2018 and 2017. We've got about close to 1 million transactions done in the local version of the faster payments module. Now, you compare that to regions where you've got fast payments in the UK, you've got the Swedish version of what we have here in Bahrain through the Swish app. I think Bahrain has come a long way in terms of nationalizing a wallet per se in the region, and I think that is a more sustainable version or structure that we could work with. Within banks, we've seen obviously impressive things from the telecom industry. Bahrain has instigated an attempt to do this about 10 years ago with one of the telecoms in Bahrain. At the time, adoption wasn't as exciting as it is today.
This technology has advanced so much now.
Exactly, and the user experience have changed significantly. And I think the main challenge that we see within those structures is simply because of KYC elements and compliance elements when it comes to introducing international payments. Local payments seem to be effective or more effective than the international version, just because we've got a local clearing system that is so efficient compared to even the world clearing systems. I mean, Bahrain technically has one of the fastest clearing system in the world. So you've got payments clearing in 15 seconds through the central bank. So it's not as big news to us today that these innovations are starting to get more adopted. However, I think within structures we need to figure out something more sustainable, more easier for the customers, and obviously safer for both the debit side and the credit side.
Collaborating with telecom could be an answer to that. Ali, do you think of it as the wallet as a potential competitor or collaborator?
if you draw down on the basic essence of a wallet, it's just a payment solution. I mean, banks will have to adopt it at some point in time because it's a solution that banks could also potentially use. So there isn't such a thing that they're competing. I mean, when you bring the Apple Pay, when you bring the Google, what the Google solution is, but if you bring those things into the playground and you basically the customers will start using them, it's not really something that they're taking away. It's like us using SWIFT, for example, to process payments or using Visa to make the payments on behalf of the customer. It's just another service provider that you're going to have to integrate with.
Then this will take things away from the bank.
So I'll give you the GIB's perspective, and then I'll give you, from our perspective, we never had it. So similar to, like, for example, the fintechs that are coming up, where this is actually advantageous for us because it gives us a channel to go through it. For the banks that are heavily reliant on that income, it will take. And research has shown that the potential loss for banks in terms of revenue that's going to be taken from the fintechs and others is around 30 to 35% of anything pertaining to payments. But they have much more to give. So.
Okay, so we'll go to STC with this question. Would you collaborate with banks? Would this be something that you would want to do, or are you going to compete with banks, just like we were talking this morning about Google and Apple, and just like you mentioned?
In STC, currently we are working with banks. Okay, we are using their platforms, we are cooperating with them, and I think this is the area that we as STC wants to introduce. As Ali mentioned, that this is a way that we want to cooperate with banks. Telco has a reach bigger than banks. So this is, we want to, support customers that, they don't have access to banks, or they are far away from, places where, services or banking services are available in.
Suren, could we get an international perspective on this? Because, and we have some interesting questions we'll move on to later.
I mean, I think the actual question is similar to, are fintechs going to disrupt banks? Are the big tech going to disrupt banks? And the way I see it is, telcos definitely bring enormous value, but I think the narrative is going to be more one of collaboration. I don't know how many of the telcos would want to be a bank, and there'll be kind of issues about potentially getting banking licenses as well. So I think the actual debate is very similar to when we talk about
Bank collaborating here, so maybe they would be interested.
Yeah, so I think it's very similar to our fintechs, big tech, and actually it's going to be probably more collaboration.
I think the banking model, though, in general, would definitely be looking to change. I mean, it's not only the telcos and what they're coming to offer, it's also the banking model itself. I mean, how much are we going to continue to be the guys who are going to own the custodianship in terms of the relationship with the central bank, own the confidence
being
of the customers,
silos,
go out and distribute. So if you take a look at a lot of the banks now, they have these small schemes, for example, on board with the Netflix and have this common card, or with Amazon, the same card that Amazon launched. I mean, that's just an acquisition channel. And so the banks were able to get all of these customers through Amazon who became Amazon Prime customers, able to pay for their services, and their portfolio in terms of number of customers just grew. But at the back end, there was a bank. So, I mean, we believe that there will become a point in time where you'll have a lot of these telcos that are competing because they're cash rich and they can go out and they're fighting for the reach. But then the custodianship in terms of the confidence remains with the bank and will always remain with the bank. That there's a struggle for people. I mean, they feel very comfortable with telcos and what they have to offer in terms of giving them their data. But when it comes to a person's livelihood and the money that is earned so hard, banks are still the custodians of that confidence.
And it's kind of what we said before. It's the concept of unbundling the bank, right? So actually, the banks will, retain the core components like custodianship, right? But actually, what's stopping them kind of essentially bringing fintechs in for the front office, kind of trade, client analytics, and then bringing the telcos in for the mobile wallet component?
So, Mohammed, banks have been a source of security and comfort over the years. How can you bring the customer along on the journey with you?
I think, one thing that, as a bank employee, I wear my banker's hat before coming in, and then, when I arrive at the office, I actually wear the, innovator hat. So we've seen over the last, let's say couple of years, even, in the region, is that, there's a lot of talk about, fintechs trying to, say that, okay, we are trying to improve the customer's journey. We are trying to adapt or support what the banks never really been able to do to the customers. Now, to a certain degree, a nice UX, user experience, a nice looking app is one thing. Now, complying with, different regulations across the world is another. The banks have always been custodians of the relationship from, between the customers and the central bank to their international payments, for example, to their mortgage, to their credit. So, it is one thing to improve the customer's behavior or the customer's journey. However, what we tend to lack or to never really, make a good eye on is that while we have, or we're trying to improve the customer's journey, I think our main focus remains to be safe custodians of your money, safe custodians of the shareholders and the remaining population that provides the credit. And then we're trying to, I think, the best way, I believe, the best way to approach this is to actually complement or work with the fintechs in order to improve the customer's journey, because they bring in an angle that the banks never really embrace, just because they've been busy looking at the remainder of the rule book.
Yeah, well, the number that's under the last line. You mentioned the mortgage, but for me as a customer, if I could go to STC Pay and be able to pay my mortgage through that, it's much easier for me. I won't have to go to the bank. And there are still some major issues that will require physical presence. And this question is for the bankers.
So if you talk about banking in general, I can ask everybody to raise their hand. Who went to a branch in the past month? And I'd say not many of us went. Because, one hand got raised.
I mean, unless they work
I don't
in
know
banks,
what kind of bank you're dealing with. But not much of us have gone to the banks. And the reason being is because the whole process has changed, the way banks have interacted. So banks aren't demanding for customers to go. The only time that we're asking for customers to go is when the regulatory requirement demands that we have a wet signature or we have somebody to verify that the customer's authorizing the transaction. And I must give kudos and credit to CBB, who've achieved significant strides in transforming the customer engagement, customer onboarding process. So, that's changing as the regulations change, because before, for example, when we first launched MEEM in Saudi Arabia, there was a mandate from the regulator that we have to have the customer come to the branch. So we would complete everything to the point where all we need to do is say approved, and that we couldn't do until he came to the branch. He signed on a paper with the wet ink, and then immediately after that, he would have his card and go out. That was because it was imposed, but when we designed MEEM, it was completely branchless. So I think banks are pushing the envelope. It's not only GIB, I know Hojeij, I know many other banks, I know ABC here is looking at something, also NBB, BISB, everybody's looking at this kind of model. So we're not asking the customer, and we've all transformed in the way the customer engages with the bank. The real challenge is getting the customer to feel comfortable to use these different solutions. So it's not necessarily just basically going to the branch and completing a transaction. Case in point, you're saying you're feeling comfortable to pay your mortgage from using Viva, using STC Pay, but your money's in the bank. So they can do an automatic deduction and you don't have to actually work for it at all. And so long as you have that approach, then why would you go to STC Pay? And those are the things. So I think it's about understanding what each solution can do. I think a wallet has a significant value for the customer in terms of giving him the ease of processing transactions, giving him these different solutions when he's traveling, for example, and he doesn't like using the card or giving the card. Cards, we know there's a lot of fraud, and so all you have to do is tap the phone.
Let me, I would add to, today the main challenge that we do have in wallet is the customer trust. Yes, you're right, we are using a bank as we are holding the total pool money, okay? but we also liable for this money in front of the customer. So this is his money. Our central bank, licensed us to do so. So this is, where STC.
About this.
Yeah,
so we'll
yeah. This is, we got the license to host or hold the money. Their way, it's STC Pay. It is a wallet where you store value. So there is a money on it, and also the other option, which is other digital wallets. You link your card, and the money stays at the bank. What we are adding is a different experience, the ease of use, the ease of access, and plus the value-added service. Today, if you go and buy, we are introducing our loyalty points, Qitaf, that you can earn point and redeem point and use Qitaf as a method to pay. So this is something that we can, we will add in the future. Definitely, if regulator allow us tomorrow to give loans using one of the banks or doing it by ourselves, this is also an option, because today you're talking about. We are looking at a microfinance, loans. So we will give people a credit of, instead of going and getting credit card, this is what China did. They surpassed the credit card directly to the mobile wallets. So using the fund is available by, Ant Financial, Alibaba, or other companies to give it to customer at, convenient price. This is the thing that we are adding as telco. Use, easy of use, different value-added service that today certain banks are not able. They have to change their systems.
Not all.
Yes,
Not all.
definitely, yeah.
So that's the thing, because a lot of banks are moving into that space. I think there's a great opportunity. You've mentioned some very exciting stuff. There's a great opportunity not only for the banks to consider providing an infrastructure to telcos, but the same flips around. So you have a lot of banks who have a dinosaur architecture, and they need something that is agile like STC. And then all of a sudden you have an opportunity to come up and say, instead of you building your digital bank or your digital wallet, white label our digital solution and take it as your product. And there are so many ways to play around this.
Yes.
But that's why I'm saying, very, very funny story. We went to a bank here locally, and I said, I'd like to help you build your digital bank, GIB, not myself. We'd like to help you build your digital bank. They looked at me like I was crazy. Like, this person is not normal. I was like, we see a value add in helping this growing. And so the collaboration, it's still not, I don't think it's settled very well yet here in the region. You're seeing it more globally, such as Fidor Bank, if anybody knows what Fidor Bank is. They're going out and helping banks become digital, and they're helping other telcos achieve their digital bank.
But that's really refreshing, right? Because that's what should be happening, turning up to say, well, actually, look, we can help you deliver your online bank or this component of it. And actually, for the bank to kind of feel shocked or feel threatened is ridiculous, right? So I think, more and more as we talk, the angle is very much collaboration, right? Both can coexist, both can learn of each other. Why should a bank go and reinvent infrastructure when actually they can work with the mobile wallets to deliver it? But even going back to your original question of how do you bring the customer along, they're screaming out for it, because a lot of their consumer products, they're getting this kind of usability UI, right? But I think Mohammed's point is a good one as well. UI, customer journey is all well and good, but you need to have the security, the depth of the product differentiation, right? That's the difference between digitization and digitalization, right? You can have a nice UI, nice customer journey, but you need to create digital products, right? Digital products that differentiate, make the user's experience easier and convenient, right? And I think the UI, lots have happened in the UI space, and I think we've all seen it with our banks we use. It's a much richer experience, but actually digitalization of the digital products is where I think more work needs to be done, and that's where collaborating with fintechs and the mobile wallets is actually going to help accelerate that.
I think one thing that I just wanted to note that while we're looking at the whole ecosystem, it's important to also absorb or adapt to the demographics or the geography that you're working in. So while Bahrain has a perfect testing ground. However, the issue that we usually face is that how can you then expand? How can you then embrace what have you built into something else that you can build for someone else or in another region? Now, the whole ecosystem, you've mentioned that you'd prefer to go and look for a mortgage through an app. Now, I could easily do that part, but then I need to call you in to go to the notary, right? So how do I link up to the notary office in Bahrain? How do I facilitate trade with the ports authority and make sure that I've received the goods and I don't really need to give you the documentation or the heavy documentation involved with trade finance? These are the things that we're trying to work with the regulators, with the central banks, with the port authorities, with the IGA in Bahrain. There is a major project on eKYC that's going to probably dwarf all the other initiatives that we've done in the past, just because it gives you a solid base in order to connect to multiple authorities in Bahrain. And that's the part that we usually tend to forget, is really Apple Pay the best payment solution for Bahrain? Would it be a Benefit Pay? Would it be a Viva Pay?
It should be more personalized.
Exactly. I mean, we need some personalized views of the region that we're in and the cultural aspects. I mean, STC Pay might be the perfect solution in Saudi. Would it be eligible, or will it be so relevant in Bahrain? Probably, because we share the same cultures, we share the same dynamics, day-to-day interactions. Is really picking up my watch to go and pay easier for me than using my mobile or picking it up from my credit card? I mean, those are the things that in such a big region, it might be worthwhile to test thoroughly and quickly. However, in Bahrain, we're not as big of a population that you could just keep on testing different ideas day in, day out, and then hope that one of them sticks, while you've invested so much already, and you tend to have an issue trying to replicate that in a closer region where the bank is either licensed to do it and has the ability and resources to do so.
Ali, when he said Bahrain has the perfect testing ground, you were shaking.
Well, it is the perfect testing ground. That's definitely not the point. I mean, the regulator has done things that other regulators in the region haven't even started to think about. And we have to give credit to both EDB and to the Central Bank of Bahrain. Chapeau bas. The point being is, if you start comparing Apple Pay to Benefit, it's like comparing Goliath to not even David, to a much smaller entity. And for the simple reason being is, Apple Pay, it's about where your payments are accepted and where your payments are received, versus Benefit, your payment can only be received in Bahrain. So as an individual who's, let's say, a wallet advocate who really wants to join the wallet space, if I was given the choice between Apple and a Benefit to put that money, of course it'll go to Apple, for the simple reason because I get broader reach and what I can get into it. Telcos provide us with the data, provide us with the access, but they don't necessarily provide us with the devices where everything is held, and that's where our life is. And that device is what controls our life today, whether we like to admit it or not. It is how we manage our life, your contact, your family's pictures. You stop carrying your iPhone, your Walkman, if anybody remembers the Walkman, if you're old as me. So that device has controlled us. And so if you're comparing Benefit, which is an app or a solution which goes onto an Apple device versus an Apple device that can be accepted anywhere in the world.
Don't get me wrong. I mean, in terms of its usability in Bahrain, I'm talking about reaching out to the unbanked population. I'm reaching out to the generation that's about to perhaps graduate and start coming into the workforce. Is it the most beneficial solution that the bank needs to invest in heavily today? Whether, is Apple gonna wait until it goes to regions that are much higher in terms of population before coming to Bahrain?
The world is getting smaller,
exactly.
And these technologies are becoming more available for everyone. So
exactly. I mean, the convergence of the world is coming in, and it's making our lives simpler in one hand. However, the complications when it comes to local implementation is something that we usually, don't tend to work it out from the beginning, and then tend to face issues once it's implemented and ready to go live.
I think with what the CBB has achieved in terms of API and open banking, and what Salam has achieved also in a very limited period of time over the past year or so, it is going to be very difficult for the likes of Apple and others to Google Pay, if you want, to basically miss on the likes of Bahrain. That is why this whole open API, eKYC, ease of doing business, digital signature versus wet signature has come into play. It is because we want to attract these players. The more we're able to attract them, the more we become relevant. And now it's a race. I mean, the governments are starting to realize that they need to work together. EDB has been one of the proponents of trying to get everybody engaged, and we have to also give them credit for that. So as a result of all that effort, you're going to start seeing these players coming in. It's not a question of if, it's just a question of when.
Exactly.
And allow me to add one thing. Today, Benefit Pay in Bahrain or any mobile wallets there is a difference between the digital wallet itself, Apple Pay, where you put your card, tokenize it, and then you start using it. But for mobile wallets, we do have, customer can store value. We will have different products because this is the attraction. I have to incentivize the customer and the merchant to come to the system itself. It's a network effect. If I don't have that network effect, it will not work. None of the wallets will work. And this is way, I totally agree. Going globally, this is what what we do have in STC as a strategy. We will not stay. Today we have FIFA Cash in Bahrain, FIFA Pay in Kuwait. So all this telco owned by STC will integrate and work together. And this is where we will also expand and work with partners from different countries to start accepting our payments. For us, we are looking for, countries where Saudi travels or, people within Saudi that they send money to. So this is, the way that we are working. In terms of, having different players like, Apple Pay or Google Pay or Samsung Pay, this is, definitely will help us in general to educate people and trusting, the mobile as a method of payment. And it will help everybody. This is the good thing that, the benefit will go to the customer themselves. Yes. Yeah.
Here's the question, and this is, sorry I'm taking a while, but here's a flip side to the question, which is, if Apple Pay is going to start, which they've just recently announced, to accept other banks' cards being plugged into it, that's kind of like a digital wallet to a certain extent. I mean, outside of the fact that he has a current account and everything else, and the process, let's say, is digitized at the back end, if it is, then that value proposition of having something that is easier to manage and that is connected to all your devices diminishes. Would you agree? So the concept of having a digital wallet is more of having a current account and with a bank that is more digitally savvy.
Yes.
Correct? And so you're having live.com coming in, you've got Neobank coming into Saudi, all of which are coming in, all of which also have access to Apple Pay. And so they're going to make it easy for the customer to let's say, be able to make transactions using the wallet. So the question that I have is it still a differentiated value proposition by just saying, because what's happening now is STC more or less is starting to go into the bank conundrum is, I have a current account, how do I attract you to me as a customer?
STC has more reach than banks in Saudi Arabia.
In addition to that,
what is reach?
Reach is all over Saudi Arabia. Today, if you go to certain areas, far north or far east, they don't have a bank today. We have, we are working, if you go to Neom today, it's a complete city by itself. There is no bank there. This is one thing that, STC can reach to people, staying there. And, today, having just an Apple Pay, a method of accepted payments in 350,000 point of sale, this is the only limitation that they do have. But for us, you can transfer money to a friend without Apple Cash or that they will, if they introduce it to the market, this is where the added value that will have. You can send by using a text message. For us today, you can send just using a mobile number. The second thing is, in addition to, the mobile number, you have different services that banks today, if a new bank comes, they don't have the base of customers. We have all Saudi today. This is one. We can go and sell, loans using, whether building our own credit risk appetite or going to a bank and get, their input and work with them to give loans. Microloans, credit card. We are working currently with Visa, MasterCard, and also we are working with Meta, our national player in the market. So this is the way that, we are adding value. Apple Pay is just a method of payment. You just link your card and do a transaction. That's it.
And there's no dispute about that. That is exactly what they are. But the question was more around, you were saying about the fact that you have reach. And reach, according to everybody else's understanding, is the ability for a physical presence in some shape or form where the customer is able to come in and complete a transaction. So if you take that into account, that's moving away from digital, and you've automatically removed the concept of digitization. So what you're referring to is the customer base. Absolutely buy into that nobody else has it like STC. What are you, 27?
It's not only the customer base. In Saudi today, you can complete the transaction completely digital. As I mentioned in my presentation, you go to AlShehabi, you do your KYC. It's a full, because we have, the government has your fingerprint. The minute that you go and I put your ID, immediately I will verify this is Ahmed. Plus, you can't issue a SIM card, just, you go to the store and get the SIM card. You have to go, put your fingerprint and get this SIM card. The minute that you have both, today, nobody can live without a SIM card or a phone. So all these things, it's there. So we just put the phone number and you have access to all transactions that you can do digitally. Maybe different countries, they don't have such privilege that, but Saudi today, using this platform, helps banks today, and one of them is Meme, to import customer without going and having,
That's what I'm saying. So the reach isn't as important, but the customer base is. But the reach, having the ability to reach.
I disagree. Still, the reach is one of the things that, if the reach is not important, why central banks are introducing agent banking? To help bank to go beyond this.
Let's take some questions from Slido, because I think this could go on for much longer. And a lot of the questions are for STC. So how would telcos comply in case of regulation conflict between TRA and the central banks?
What is TRA?
Will there be any conflict between
the telco regulator. Telco. Today we are, as STC Bay, regulated by the central bank. We have nothing to do with what we have in Saudi, CITC. Yeah.
Okay, other question. Do you have a license from the central bank? You already answered that. And what are guarantees STC provides to their customers in terms of data privacy?
Today, we do have customer protection code from SAMA, central bank, and also, there is very tight regulation. You can't share information. You can't do anything, with this information without the customer consent.
Next question. In Bahrain, adoption of online banking is still below international benchmarks, personal and business. What should be our action plan to become leaders? This is to banks in Bahrain.
I think, we've seen, as I mentioned before, we've seen triple-digit growth in this space. Now, it's probably more evident in the retail space, where we're seeing much more higher volumes and values. However, within the business side, I think this is what we are, I think that's the next wave that we will see in the region and specifically in Bahrain once we get more of the ecosystem set up. As I mentioned before, the business transactions usually are coming from more trade interactions. So I understand the trade, I'll give you just an example of trade in Bahrain. Previously, when you needed to clear out your imports from the port, and it was a non-digital fashion, it used to take you as long as 3 days to do it. Now, since the introduction of Fawatir, and you could literally pay your customs through Fawatir, which is just a national utility, you could reduce that to 15 minutes and get your goods out from the port. So I think the next phase is going to be dependent on how quick we can link up the ecosystem ventures together, be it from the trade authority, be it from just any kind of merchants related for high value payments, and being able to just adapt a better way to get the next generation of be it businessmen, family businesses, high net worth individuals to get more adapted to doing international payments or more online banking payments. One way to do it is through offering more competitive rates in a digital channel. However, I think it takes more than just reducing cost just to get people in. I think it's more of providing them the security, providing them with instant confirmations, instant advices of the payments, beneficiary advices. These are the things that would get them more comfortable doing these international payments.
Yeah, I mean, an observation, right? So I think, when I look at London and everyone talks about London and have the key ingredients for fintech, close proximity, you've got the banks, you've got the fintechs, you've got the VCs, you've got government, all within 15 minutes of each other. You've got a developing ecosystem. What I've seen here the last 2 days, I see those similar ingredients. And I think, in terms of benchmarks and if you're lagging, I think on the personal side, apart from Asia, I think everyone's working on adoption. I think on the business side, there's still a lot needs to happen. But I think I would say to really drive that, it's about, as Mohammed said, producing really differentiated digital products. But I think what I've seen in Bahrain, you've got an amazing ecosystem, and you've got all the key ingredients to be one of the leaders.
Take another question. Would you like to say?
Yes.
Yeah, please.
Online banking, everybody does.
Okay.
Today, everybody in this room is doing online banking because it's just going on your website, doing a transfer, whatever it is. In terms of digital banking, where Europe has excelled compared to locally, is a lot of them are digital banks that are not part of a major bank that is trying to hog everything to itself. And where those digital banks have excelled is their willingness to partner and forego a portion of its revenue to tie up with a company like, for example, telco in Germany, or a insurance company in France. And all of these different players, what they do is they give you the network. So banks were willing to forgo some of that revenue, these digital banks, where here in the region, banks continue to be the controller of everything. So that's why I think it hasn't worked.
Take another question. User personal data has been stolen from large banks in developed countries. How safe is this data with the companies offering mobile wallets regionally?
In our case, central bank, Saudi central bank, introduced the e-wallet security for anybody who wants to introduce an e-wallet. And this is, as you know, SAMA is one of the toughest regulator in terms of security. So, in our case, we have to register the device, make sure that, we have all the required security. Alhamdulillah, in Saudi, we have a very robust system, and this is why we did not hear or see any breach in terms of security in any of the banks.
There's another question for you. What will be considered a successful STC wallet penetration rate out of your customer base, and when do you think you can achieve that?
Today, it's not just our customer can register for the wallet. Anybody can register, okay? This is one.
So someone from outside Saudi can use STC Pay?
Yes, we are introducing something that will allow people to use STC Pay not as a payment option, but with the different services that we will introduce later on. Anybody comes to Saudi, whether you are a resident or non-resident, you can use STC Pay today. We are working, heavily. We are a very agile company, startup mode. We are pushing everything, and I think, in the coming 2 to 3 years, you will see STC Pay one of the dominant players in terms of payment in Saudi.
For customers, e-wallet might be the one accepted by more merchants. How would telcos convince merchants to use their e-wallet instead of banks' e-wallet?
This is, as I said, it's an incentive.
All the questions are for STC. So.
It is, today is you have to incentivize whether the merchant or the consumer. This is where the network effect will work. So, we are working to incentivize, merchant today, and instead of having a point of sale or different, setup in your system. So we are trying to make it easy for, merchant to integrate with STC base so they can use it easily. Also, we are giving them different dashboard to see their transactions. Also, later on, we might work with one of the government authorities to provide financing to small and medium businesses.
This is an interesting question. Do customers tend to trust banks more than telcos since customers don't switch banks often? That's very true because
one of the major points in a recent event that we've attended in Singapore, and what was evidently clear even for the telcos that have been operating for centuries in trying to penetrate the banking sector, the financial services sector, is that trust doesn't transfer. The trust has remained and will continue to remain with the financial institutions. What the telcos offer is the ease of access, is the digital let's say, services. But what the banks are, they are the custodians of the confidence. And so what they were talking about at the time was the fact that banks and telcos need to find a way to collaborate, whereby the banks will hold the confidence of the customer and the telcos can go out and continue to penetrate the market.
One thing that I wanted to just add on that is, it might be true today, just because, I could port out from one telecom, provider to the other with probably minimal paperwork, and perhaps even, through an online channel, right? However, today, as a consumer, I bank with my mortgage provider. I mean, I'm not gonna go and think about, oh, this bank has a better UX realistically, but these guys have my mortgage, right? So when open banking comes in and introduces convenience of switching your mortgage provider from one bank to the other in a matter of minutes, hours, even days, compared to what I would experience today, having to move my mortgage from one bank to the other, even if you offer me 0.5% difference today, I would think twice about it because it's such a cumbersome exercise. However, with open banking regulations coming in, with more people trying to become part of the ecosystem and facilitators, it might be the case that banks will experience customers switching over more than what we are experiencing today. However, I think that is yet to be, experienced in the next few years.
So we've kind of struggled with this question in London as well. So you've got the challenger banks like Monzo, and we talked about Monzo. Now, I think it's a generation thing as well. So the millennials, you'll see more of them move to Monzo, and hopefully it's more than just the orange card, right? Because the service and the convenience and the culture they portray. So you're kind of seeing millennials more open to do that. And what you'll see is, you'll see less loyalty in that generation in terms of probably moving around, whereas most of us in this room have been with our banks 10 years plus. But I think it comes down to what Mohammed said. You need to produce differentiated digital products to incentivize people to move. And then the experience needs to be worth it, because moving from a bank, people are generally lazy. You kind of need to make it convenient and easy for them as well.
I have a question for you.
Can you allow me to add one thing, which is today, Ali, you can build trust with anybody. And this is what we are as a telco or wallet provider. This is what we are trying to do. So building trust with the customer to, put his money with us, incentivizing him. And this is the real change that, will happen. This is, where bank has to wake up and do something as a differentiator. In France, Orange is doing a great business, and it's a telco. So this is,
But I agree with Ali's point earlier. I think the Nirvana model is actually the collaboration, right? The different players working together produce that better service and differentiated product, and then you kind of just maintain the trust.
I have another question for you. Are banks just large data providers and aggregators? Money is becoming just data.
Yeah, I mean, Anthony Jenkins, who was the ex-CEO of Barclays, he just described a bank as a data company, right? If you think about the trading, the sales, it's all basically data. Are we becoming data companies? I think, as I said earlier in the interview with Maya, I think we need to move faster. We need to be data-driven and data companies.
There was a point that only banks had the data back like 50, 60, 70 years ago. Yeah.
Today, to be honest, telcos have the data.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't move a single inch without these guys knowing everything. Not only that, they can analyze the messages that you get and create a story that banks. I mean, I know that there are solutions out there that allow you to tap into the customer's phone, but with data privacy becoming more and more something that we give control to the customers, I think, in my own personal view, telcos are the ones with the data. We have some data, which is where you spend your money, but not necessarily where you're going during the day and what you're doing.
Banks should be data-driven organizations, and the only way we're going to get there fast is that collaboration with the different players.
Data partnerships, which is what I was referring to yesterday.
Partnerships is something that we would really like to discuss. What could be a possible partnership moving forward?
So,
What kind of partnerships do
No,
you
currently,
see?
currently for the case of STC Bay and also other players in the market in Saudi Arabia, we are partnering with banks. We are working with currently we are working with 6 banks in Saudi, and we are also expanding. So it is not something that we are looking just to compete, but we are in Saudi cooperating under the supervision of the central bank.
I think I can't disclose much, but
You have to.
You have to now.
we have to. There are ways of playing in this field that surpass the egos of both sectors.
Okay.
And unless both parties come to the table with their ego stripped off, then it won't work. And I can also give the same example. Fidor Bank successfully worked with one of the telcos in Germany. Then when they went to another country to work with the telco actually came in with ego and the model didn't work. The same model didn't work. So that's why I'm saying if you want this to work, both parties have to come in, have to agree it's a win-win, and then how do you make it work for both parties?
I completely agree. If we're going to deliver on the fintech innovation promise, it's leaving the egos at the door and changing the culture and the conversation and driving collaboration.
There's a very interesting question from with the name from Ahmed Janahi. Fintech should consider the blue-red ocean strategy, focusing on the small merchants for acceptance, so the consumer can accept the transformation gradually. What do you think? It's not a question, it's a comment.
I think, fintechs and their solution and how they're going to engage with the merchants in order to acquire customers. But if you're talking from a bank perspective, I think the concept of going out and continuously trying to innovate is borderline suicidal. We don't have the depth of pockets or even the agility to do what some of these fintechs do. So what we do is we tend to seek to partner with these fintechs, be it telcos, be it real other fintechs that are offering a solution and integrating with us. And that will help adoption.
We have to wrap up, so we won't be able to ask the rest of the questions, but you can come up to Ahmed. Most of those questions are related to STC Pay. Quickly, just to wrap up, a last comment. Again, partnerships and collaboration. In 2 words, where and how?
To me, the most exciting, we've talked about all of them, is how banks, big tech, telcos, and fintech collaborate to really deliver on the promise.
Yeah, for us, we are working with banks, and I think it is a way of cooperation, and we will increase it. Today, it's reality in Saudi, and it will grow, inshallah, in the near future.
I think the main focus is going to be again on data. So we are definitely looking to collaborate more with future AISPs, just to either improve our service or introduce new products and services that are getting pushed to the customer.
Ali?
We've said it many times, if you think you can do it on your own, you're not stable in the head. So you need the partnership with fintechs and telcos. And the areas of partnership are going to be in the differentiated services, digitization, and data. Those are the main ones.
Ali, Mohammed, Ahmed, and Suren, thank you very much. Thank you.